don't mean it. I mean honest, and you know what I mean. I
Right,
try to
right.
live with.
Sure.
I try to live with those.
Okay. And you were mentioning, writing down your core values. That kind of falls into the concept of creating strategies. So, do you think that's an important thing for other people to do? Is create some sort of strategy for their business, for their personal life, what have you?
I do. I think everybody, James, is what you well pointed out. Everybody's a little bit different, and that's
Mhm.
good. It's good because we were all the same. It'd be a pretty boring world.
Sure.
But I think that when people are on different, I guess we're all on different paths and journeys in life,
Mhm.
and we learn things at different points. And it's been cliche to say these days, well, there's a reason we met. Well, there are reasons people meet, and I do think that it's very important, especially for somebody that's in a leadership position,
Mhm.
to have a firm handle on who they are as a person, and that comes with understanding your core values and sticking to them. And if you get off your core values, find a way to get back on them real quick. But
Sure.
I think that what you said, James, is imagine if all the CEOs, and let's just say not even all, let's just say a great majority of CEOs sat down and wrote out those core values. I would imagine that you probably see a paradigm shift in business right there, because I think
Mhm.
in general society, and you pointed it out, has gotten off some pretty significant core values. Um, I just read
Yeah.
this book called The Hacking of the American Mind, and it talks about social media in depth. There's a few chapters in there and what it's actually done to the conversation or communication between human beings. And of course, there's scientific backing there, but it makes good sense to me that I'd much rather call you on the phone
Mhm.
than text.
Right.
I'd
Yeah.
much rather see you like this than just see a little picture of you up there.
Sure. Sure.
And I think the point is that we're still human and we still have needs and desires. And as long as we're aware of who we are, I think we stand a better chance of finding true success in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't have said that better myself. Actually, that's very well put. Um, Now, what do you think are some of the common reasons that entrepreneurs just that they fail or just simply give up? What do you think that is?
I think a glaring one is funding.
Yeah.
I think that's, sometimes people underestimate what they need. And I think sometimes classes in the financing of startups would be a great benefit. But I also
Mhm.
think that, the unwillingness to adapt at the startup phase.
Right. Right.
It's like, let's just say you and me, we got this great idea. James and John are going to rock the world.
Mhm.
And we create this company with a strategy and a business plan, but we're unwilling to bend as
Right.
we find the boots on the ground. And maybe necessarily James and John's idea wasn't so good in this one aspect.
Mhm.
I think that entrepreneurs need to be extremely adaptable. And this is a great time to be in the startup phase because you're not so entrenched in bureaucracy.
Right.
You're usually calling the shots and you can change on a whim.
Mhm.
In fact, I think that startup is the most exciting time of any business. I think that you get it right here. And believe me, and you know this, James,
Sure.
it's not easy, man. The entrepreneur stages, if everybody was an entrepreneur, we'd all be doing it.
Right.
But it takes a certain person to have that dream, that idea, and to use their character and personality to drive it through.
Mhm.
But be willing to change. You know, um, I'd say funding is a primary, and of course, then if you're a nonprofit or for profit, it brings on some different dimensions. But I think be willing to adapt, and I think a lot of times people that don't adapt will fail.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. When I'm advising and consulting business owners, especially in the very beginning, one of the things that I will bring up to them is, do you either already have 3 to 5 years worth of your assets necessary to run your business, or do you have access to those through either venture capital or angel investing or what have you? Do you have access to those 3 to 5 years? Because if you don't have at least that much, then you're going to be part of that 90% that you start something and it just fizzles.
Yeah, that's really good. And my wife and I ran a small business for 23 years, and we ran a backpacking store in Florida. I mean, I sold more ice axes and climbing shoes than you could imagine at Florida, but we changed our business plan several times. We adapted to markets as they opened up to us. We were able to, as boots on the, we were able to adapt very quickly because we were in the chain of stores. We were able to take new product and kind of at times be the test market for new product. And we just had a blast. And there was a time in our business where for 10 years we ran guided trips. And the point is that we adapted to whatever the market allowed us to adapt to.
Sure.
And and every business is different. You were in financial markets. It's a whole different thing from specialty retail. Obviously, some of the business models and practices still apply, but you have to, really know your market, study it, and even then, even with a college degree in business, when I got into my actual first job, I went to Southern California. I was clueless, even though I knew business law and I didn't know it. I knew a little bit about risk management and insurance and marketing. I didn't know anything till I got actual experience. Right. And in fact, that's one thing that I'm noticing now is that there's a lot of people out there giving advice, but they don't have a lot of experience. And it's hard sometimes, unless you have the boots on the ground experience, to give other people advice. I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, I have too. It's what I call water cooler advice. It's free advice and it's worth just about as much as you paid for it. So, that's my 2 cents there. Is
no, but you're right, man. And it's I got you. I'll lead you. That's good.
So, what's something that in life you wish you had done earlier that you've learned now has become vitally important and you didn't do it at the time?
I wish I had learned a couple of other languages. I wish that I had learned probably Spanish, and I think Arabic would be fun, but and a couple of, or maybe Chinese. I wish that I had learned. It's never too late. Maybe I should go get the Rosetta Stone, and next time I see you, I can say something in Chinese. But but I wish I had learned a couple of languages. Yeah, that's about all I can think of right now. But probably a million things if you gave me more time. But I think
Sure.
that would be it.
So kind of focusing on you on a personal level, John, what would you say the hurdles were for you personally, especially like when you were transitioning out of the military and then going into entrepreneurship? What were those hurdles and how did you overcome that?
Well, what I did first is I stayed connected. My chain of command, my first sergeant, the first several months after I, ETS, I just stayed connected, and it doesn't matter where you go. I came back to Florida. I grew up on the beaches of Florida. I wasn't like a Brooklyn kid or anything like that. And I just, it was isolative. And anytime I was able to get in the position, I always made contact with either a guy that was in my unit or somebody that I knew. As far, I was probably very fortunate because I was reacquainted very quickly after I got out with a woman who I had known 12 years earlier. Now, of course, she had been married. She'd had 2 kids, and I was actually getting very close to re-enlisting. And my brother, who happened to see this person, said, "Hey, John just got out of the Army. I'm sure he'd love to see you." And then, long story short, we hit it off again. It's almost like we never stopped. Only this time she was divorced and had 2 kids. So, but we hit it off, and we decided that I was going to have to do a hardship tour, and we really didn't want to do that. So we looked at a need in our community. We had both been in business before. Well, she had been in business, the restaurant business. So we opened up the specialty retail store, and it ended up lasting 23 years.
Wow.
But I'd say for people transitioning, stay in contact with your old network if you can. Guys and gals in your unit, the people that really care about you. I had many, many, many long conversations with First Sergeant and a major that was a real close friend of mine who helped me during that time period. I got out in 1989, right before the first Gulf War. Right. And, of course, my unit was gone within 6 months. And I tried to get back in, and I ended up re-enlisting back into the reserve system. But they weren't taking any prior service, and they already knew something was going to go down in the Middle East. Right. And all my first sergeant could tell me is, we're painting the tracks for the desert. So, but it was interesting because I was a 54 Bravo, which was a chemical guy, and they were worried about those Scud missiles. Remember back in the 80s?
Sure.
And but they weren't taking any prior service unless you were SF, and I was not SF qualified. So I don't know if that's good advice or bad. Just stay in contact with the people that care about you. And if you're a combat veteran, from what I've heard from those that we've interviewed, it's okay to reach out. A lot of combat veterans are they're not motivated because it's to them they might seem a little bit weaker. Mm-hmm. But reach out. Yeah. Reach out to the people that care about you.
Yeah, because when we're serving, we're part of that team environment, and then when you come back to the civilian world, it's so different because it's not that same brotherhood. It's a whole different world, and that's part of when I came back in '92, that was part of my struggle is coming back to where I grew up. It looked different, it felt different, the people behaved different. It didn't make sense to me for a while. And so that was sort of part of my hurdle that I had to get through was just kind of learning how to fit back in. So if I'd have had that kind of a network, that probably would have eased it a lot.
Yeah, I think you're right, James. And it's kind of interesting because when you and I ETS, I don't think there was any out processing. I think I just I turned in my TA-50. They checked a bunch of boxes. I think there's like 30 things you had to do, and that was it. Yeah. I don't remember down. And I know I know it's a lot different now, but even guys that have been in those places and gals too, there's not a whole lot. I mean, you're basically turned out on the street, from what I understand. Maybe it's gotten better. I don't know, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and nowadays they have the TAPS program, which does help. It's better. Not perfect, but better than. Better than we had it because, like you say, they just kind of gave you a slap on the butt and here you go, you're a civilian, and that had its own challenges. So, when you were starting your business ventures, was that something that you just kind of stumbled upon, or did you really plan that out very hard?
Well, a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. Actually, we knew that we wanted to go into business together, and at that time, it's kind of interesting how it morphed. We didn't open a backpacking store right away. Mm-hmm. This was 1991, and there was a big movement in businesses to be environmentally friendly and safe.
Sure.
So I thought, wouldn't it be cool? There was nothing in this town in Sarasota, Florida, that was like that. So we actually opened up an environmental store, and we did some hardcore retail research on body products and lawn products and cottons and educational products, and we really opened up a store. It was called Environeers. It still exists today. I sold it to my best friend from high school, and his brother and him run it. Wow. So my business is 26 years old. They've done a marvelous job with it. And then you started to see Earth Wonders and natural, different store chains had caught on to the environmental store movement. Right. And then what we did was, the second was not really stumbling. Then we saw that the local backpacking store, and as close as I could come to the military, was anything I could get to do outdoors with a backpack on. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool? They're closing down. Let's open up. So I did a tremendous amount of research on specialty retail and backpacking. And we opened up a full-service backpacking store: tents, boots, backpacks, sleeping bags, water filters, clothing, you name it. We got into the store. And for a small shop, we were probably one of the most well-stocked stores. And being in the Army, if you got the right gear, you're good to go. So I stocked that store like it was Christmas every month. And we went off on this adventure. And then the environmental thing kind of went away, and then the store tripled in size. And then I said, I got to be able to use some of this equipment. So we started selling ropes and ice axes and all this. And I took a trip down to Mexico and did my first high altitude climb. And I got back to Mexico City. I called my wife. I said, listen, I'm done mountain climbing. I will never do it again. And then 10 years later, we were still doing it. And it was a very lucrative part of our business till the mortgage debacle in 07 and 08. And then we dealt with that. But out of the 23 years we were in business, we only had 1 year that was not profitable. And that's hard to do.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty
That was
impressive.
the first. Yeah, thank you. And that was I had a great partner, my wife.